Allegiance. Okay. First we have, can you hear me back there? Okay, first we have the Rhode Island Prep Bowling Team. I'm going to read the first one, and then as I call your name, come down here, and then stay up here because I'm sure everybody's going to want to take pictures of you, okay? This is a certificate of recognition. May it be known that Joshua Rodden, Youth Duckpin Bowling Lanes, Dudek Lanes, is hereby awarded this certificate of recognition with the congratulations of the Warren Town Council for winning Rhode Island State Championship and being part of the 47th Annual National Duckpin Tournament in Maryland. Presented this 11th day, October 2022. John W. Hanley, Town Council President. Stephen P. Calenda, Vice President. Joseph A. DePasquale, Councilman. Kerry M. Cronin, Council Member. And P. Brant Heckert, Councilman. Joshua, come on down. Next, we have Sophia Neth. Sophia's not here. Okay. We have Jackson Perry. Next, we have Coach Michael Remy. And we also have Coach Kenny Rigo. Kenny's not here. Get those to where they belong, please. Okay, stay up here, guys. All right, now we have Rhode Island Bantam Bowling Team. These are the 10 to 12-year-olds. And this says, may it be known, I'm going to skip the name because I'm going to read them all again. Youth Duckpin Bowling, Dudek Lanes, is hereby awarded the certificate of recognition with the congratulations of the Warren Town Council for winning Rhode Island State Championship and being part of the 47th Annual National Duckpin Tournament in Maryland. Presented this 11th day of October 2022. John W. Hanley, Town Council President. Stephen P. Calenda, Vice President. Joseph A. DePasquale, Councilman. Kerry M. Cronin, Council Member. And P. Brant Heckert, Councilman. And the first one is Lacey Bento. And we have Matthew Hasty. We have Alexis Rivera. She's not here. We have Dylan Bento. You're welcome. We have Jonathan Ryback. Carlos Rivera, not here. Okay, next we have Ethan Bento. And we have the coach, Sandy Remy. Anybody want to take pictures? Feel free to come on up. Okay, next on the agenda is the public comment period. These are where we discuss things that are not on the agenda, so we can't actually take action on them, but it's a place where the public can come forward and bring any concerns, ideas, or questions to us. Is there anyone that would like to speak at the public comment? One at a time, please come up, tell us your name. You're closer, you can come first. Oh, me? Oh, come up. Yeah. Tell us your name.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all again. My name is Christy. I live at 73 Child Street, right here in Warren. I have a business there as well. I am coming to the council today in the hopes that we can help with the crosswalks on Market, Child, and Franklin, where the bike path crosses. I sit at my house and witness people yelling, screeching on their brakes, in addition to an accident just happened a couple days ago. But more importantly, prior to that, 2 weeks ago, ironically enough, I went down and talked with Haley at the council, and literally the next day, or at the clerk's office, excuse me, literally the next day, I witnessed a girl when I was at the Hope and Main Farmers Market get hit in the crosswalk on a bicycle and went 15 feet. And I just hope that we can either put a blinking red light, a stop sign, or a speed bump, something, a small speed, anything to try and prevent this from happening. I witnessed people fly through those streets. I mean, if a police officer was to park in my driveway, they would ticket every other car. So I am new to Warren as of a year ago, June, and I love being a little Warrenite, as I call us. And I figured I could do my small part by living here and now being a resident here and now owning a business here to try and prevent something from happening, because I've literally witnessed 2 different accidents in 2 weeks, not to mention the hundreds that we watch every day that almost happen. So that's why I want to come and talk. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, on that, bringing one on Child Street, that would be a state have to put that stop sign in.
Yes,
Okay, and the other one is at those intersections, who has the right of way? Who has the stop sign now?
well, the bicyclists would have to be,
Yeah, my point is the bikes, okay? People driving are terrible, but the people on the bikes are worse. They
No, I
figure
totally
just
get it.
because they're on a bike, they have the right of way, and I've seen them, they just go flying right through. So we can't address it, but I also want the people out there that ride the bikes like that, you know, you have the stop sign. You come to a complete stop, you look, and then you cross where the bike path crosses a road. You don't just go flying across because you don't have the right of way.
Yeah, on that note, I mean, I witnessed 2 cars just collide as well, because people are flying, like they're not going to 25. So that's why I was like, if you guys put a camera, a blinking red light or anything, I know they're state because we followed Bob Ruley. We knew that they were state property, but I can't physically go to the state. I had to come, I tried to do the chain of command by coming to you guys. Just something, because it's not just cars. I mean, little kids are walking through this after they get off the school bus. We just witnessed that the other day with a guy slamming on his brakes, and it's because they're just flying. They're not going 20, or 25. Even going across the street to go to the coffee shop. I stand in a crosswalk and I just watch people nobody stops. And I know you guys painted just recently the parking lot in the police station, that wherever that street is, was that railroad, like lime green. I'm like, even if we do something like that, maybe it will catch people's eyes.
Maybe we should refer this to the traffic commission.
of course.
That would be awesome. I did my small part in my warning.
We can't take any official action, but we're going to direct the town manager to refer this to the traffic.
Thank you.
I'm here, my name is Dennis Seavento. I live in Brown Island Street in Warren, Rhode Island. I'm here with the concern of the Airbnb first reading. Is that on the agenda this evening?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Would you rather wait and address it at the time? Because I believe it
But it was the
is.
convenience of the,
uh,
I don't see it on the agenda. That's why I'm asking the question. And
Yeah, it's under old business, I believe.
this is supposed to be the first reading.
Yes, it's under old business, so it's
Well,
gonna,
I didn't go that far.
yeah, it's gonna be either that or you can say what you want now, but if you want to wait to see, maybe we'll address your questions or maybe we'll get more questions. It's up to
But that
you.
was the convenience of the council.
Let's wait till we get there. That way there, if something else comes up and you have, yeah, and you have another question, then
Yeah.
maybe the answer will have an, or it'll generate another question.
Can I ask
for you.
one quick question?
Sure.
Is this going to affect the R40 zoning,
It's going to affect the entire town. Yes,
the entire town?
correct.
So it will address the area of Twisted Point.
Correct. I don't believe there was anything in the ordinance that did it by zone. I
I
think
didn't
it
see
just-
anything in. I
Yeah,
read-
it just
I read-
addressed it by structure, which means it would apply to every residential
state
property.
has
Yeah,
changed
state
as
law,
well,
actually.
so
Yeah.
State law has changed as well.
I know, I printed both those things, read them both in its entirety. Just want to bring to the council's attention. I had a hearing back in 2017 before the zoning board, and I prevailed, and I have a decision of that hearing.
Yes.
You're familiar with it.
I should be. I was the chairman.
You were, and you signed it.
That's right.
Should I present this to the council now? I didn't make 7 copies for everybody.
So again, on the agenda item, I'd be able to respond back to you, but like, this is public comment. We just listen to what you have to say, so we can't respond.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So,
Yeah, we can put it in the record when we get to
Okay, very
that
good.
section.
Thank you.
thanks, Ben.
Is that it for public comment?
I'm here for the same issue.
Oh, please come up. Oh, you're here for the same issue. Okay. All right, next on the agenda is interviews.
Yeah.
We have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Directors. We have 2 positions available. We have 2 applicants. The first applicant is Kristen Nancy Reed, 40 Cherry Street. Is Kristen here?
Mr. President, she is traveling for family business. She is the director of the Warren Health Equity Zone, been very helpful to us in terms of the affordable housing survey, the broadband survey, has been attending the meetings. I think she's more than qualified and very interested and capable and understands the time requirements to be on the committee.
Okay. I think, the next applicant is Dr. Joan Brenner Coltrane, 1 Stonegate Road. Is Dr. Brenner here? Please come forward. Hello.
Oh.
Give
Good
us a
evening.
quick rundown of yourself and why you're interested, please.
Well, it's rather a long story. We've lived in Warren for 3 years on Stonegate. Prior to that, we own a 2-family home on Church Street. My first experience in Warren was several years ago when my son attended law school at Roger Williams. And he married right before coming out here for law school, had 2 children while he was in law school. And so I came back and forth several times. He was living on Benefit Street in Warren. And I found Warren very walkable. I enjoyed being here. And so it's a rather long story with respect to how we moved from Salt Lake City to living in Warren. But I'm an anthropologist. I'm interested in Warren as a livable community. I've never lived in a small town before. Actually, I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. So this feels a little like coming home, not quite, but it's Eastern Seaboard at least. So I'm just interested. I'm interested in solving the affordable housing. Well, maybe it can't be solved. Addressing the affordable housing issue. I have concerns about what that term means. I was at the meeting last Monday when Bob Rulli gave us a little bit of tutorial on affordable housing. And the terminology seems a little vague and a little hard to interpret. And what really does affordable mean? And so I'm not nearly as well qualified. as your first applicant, but I'm interested. And we're going to be long-term Warren residents. My husband is an EMT. He's a Warren volunteer firefighter. We're here to stay. And I think it's a remarkable opportunity to participate in small town government. I think that few of us get that opportunity, and we all probably have something to offer. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council?
Motion to approve both candidates.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve both applicants to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next. We have openings on economic development, planning, tax board of assessment, Warren Arts and Cultural. Anybody out there in TV land that would like to serve on one of these boards, please come forward. We do need your help. These are vital boards to the town and we need to keep them staffed. All right, that being said, next on the agenda is the minutes.
Do you need a motion to continue advertising?
Yeah, I imagine we should.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second to continue advertising for the open positions. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have the minutes.
Motion to approve.
I will second that.
We have a motion to approve the town council meeting, the 6th day of September 22 minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda. Anybody want to pull anything P1 or P2? That being said, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve this consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Consent agenda passes. Next, we have ordinance 01, finance and taxation. This is a second reading, and I believe this is the one that gives our finance director the ability to do what ARPA requires. Kate, you want to run us through this one more time, please?
Sure, yes, this is just, it's standard language that pertains to the reporting requirements for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So nothing's changed since the last reading, and it's a standard format. We don't really have a lot of
Any
changes we could make.
questions from the council?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve fitness and taxation Article 1. We have a second. from
Second.
Mr. Heckert seconded it already. did he?
Okay.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have 02, buildings and building regulation. Housing Division 3, rent control, section 4-144, short-term rental units, first reading. Okay, this is the one that we were talking about earlier. We did discuss this last month, not as an official reading, but as getting a draft ready. Any issues from the council from our discussion last month to what we have in front of us right now? No?
Not that I.
Well, so, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be either some public comment or some comment from my colleagues. Where do we feel we want to land on the parking? I mean, I think the parking is probably the most important issue that we need to address. And if we're going to regulate it either through the application process or making the owner of the short-term rental property go through the detail and pain and aggravation of presenting us a site plan, I think we just want to make sure we lock that down before we move forward. And I would say we need to listen to both sides, because there may be some folks that have these properties that would prefer not to have a site plan. So my position and where I feel we should land on this is almost identical to where we are in zoning. If you have a two-family property and you were coming in and you wanted to create another rental unit to turn it into a three-family, then one of those processes would you would have to provide the parking. So I would think it would only be prudent and appropriate that if you want to do a short-term rental program, you should be able to provide off-street parking. for however many people you're going to have rent. So that's where I stand right now. And I am open to the discussion and I will listen to all sides. Carrie?
I think once we get into really discussing how we want the language to read regarding parking, we're also going to have to address how all of this will be enforced and who is the body who is going to be overseeing the collection of information as far as the applications and holding on to all of that data and information. And then ultimately, once a short-term rental unit is active, who is responsible for the oversight and for making sure that the whatever it is that we decide here is being followed and obeyed and respected. Will there be regular site checks? Is this a, neighbors calling in on neighbors? Will there be regular pass by of local law enforcement? With so many of our ordinances and our policies, sometimes the enforcement component gets there's an expectation that it'll all be okay, but will it really be? If we're going to talk about requiring parking, off-street parking, there should be an option also. And is it really covered in this language that would say if a unit is a dwelling is available for short-term rental and the owner is only renting to people who do not drive cars. So a lot of people are coming to town either by Uber or Lyft or public transportation or whatever other alternate forms of transportation there are out there and not bringing a car on site. Is it appropriate to expect that parking is provided for renters who aren't bringing cars? How can we, is that the parking plan? Is the parking plan, if you bring a car, I can have an agreement with somebody offsite where you can park your car, or I can provide you with the direction to local free parking areas, or if you're not driving a car, I can rent to you.
Right.
I mean, in a lot of cities, big cities, people aren't coming with cars. And I don't think it's fair to assume that everybody who comes to visit Warren as a tourist or a visitor in any capacity is definitely going to have a car. It's becoming less and less the norm that people are coming via car.
So would that be an option, or would that be a separate component of the parking regulation?
Could be part of it. What is your parking plan? I'm only gonna rent to people who come
That's what
by
I mean.
Uber.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, how the heck are you gonna enforce that?
Well, that's a conundrum here, is that there's gonna be a lot of enforcement oversight needed for this.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the section for fees, that's to be determined, because I want to make sure the fees that we're collecting are going to cover the added burden that goes to our police, fire, building official, and the clerk's office, because there's going to be a tremendous amount of information and data that has to be collected and sorted and kept, and it's really quite a lot of work here. And when you start to throw in, I understand what Carrie's saying, is that, people come to these establishments without cars, but again, the monitoring of that seems like it would be overwhelming.
Well, actually, and if I may, and I echo and I agree with Carrie, and we might have had one or two conversations about this. Actually, something, they're going to police themselves, because the one thing I didn't mention is that if you're found to be non-compliant for whatever the issue may be, I would suggest and recommend that we put in the ordinance, you are suspended and prevented from continuing to rent until that is compliant. So if it's a parking issue, if it's you didn't pay a parking ticket or whatever the issue may be, is that your right to operate is now suspended until you become compliant. So that would make the individual who is saying, hey, I've got 3 parking spaces and 7 cars showed up, think twice about doing it, because some of those fines that go along with the non-compliance, they're pretty hefty.
Yeah, the fines.
But
Yeah.
that, I actually, this question is for Ben. We wouldn't actually be able to pull their registration until they were adjudicated. In other words, if we issued a notice of violation, it would have to be, once they were found, lack of a better term, guilty in municipal court, then we could do that. But we couldn't do it as soon as we wrote the ticket and say, until you fix this.
Yeah, but I think we could because we hold the license.
Correct, and I think
Yeah.
that with this draft ordinance in front of me, it gives authority to the police department also. Therefore, now that the police has enforcement reasons and access to our DMV databases,
Yeah.
they're within their purview to run registrations.
And this is not something that I think that they would have the ability to go to the DBR. This is something that's locally held at the local level. And I'm basing this on the law being changed and how they're going to prepare and try to project in the future of how we're going to regulate and oversee this.
Correct,
So-
very similar to junk or abandoned vehicles on property.
Yes,
Where once you
Yes.
give the police department the authority to enforce that ordinance, now the police
Yeah.
department, legally can run those registration bin checks through database, DMV database.
Another thing I see over here under the enforcement penalties and violations. Any violation of the provisions of this chapter shall be subject to a fine of not more than 1,000. Can we put also not less than 200?
sure.
Could we add a minimum in there?
Well, you could do a fee schedule.
You could. In addition, I would suggest that you incorporate section 1.8 of the current ordinance that
Okay.
kind of supersedes and regulates the entire zoning and typical ordinances. And so certainly you can put a minimum amount.
I think that makes sense, because if the penalty is high enough, as you're saying, Steve, then,
Yeah.
people are gonna take notice and,
Well, they're gonna think twice. I mean, we used to use in my old profession, the 80-20, like 80% of the time you get nothing, 20% of the time you're more successful. But on this engine, I think it's going to be 80-20, where 80% of these folks are going to be compliant right out of the red. And then you might get the 20 to 15% that are gonna try and push the envelope. But I think once it's out there that, if you're not in compliance, there's going to be a price to pay, and that price is you jeopardize doing this as a business, because that's basically what this is. This is no different than any other business.
And,
Yep. hang on. Joe?
yep. Mr. Calendo, what you were saying earlier about what you were saying earlier about the parking requirement mirroring the current zoning. Is that what you said?
Yes, yeah.
So what we're talking about here isn't impacted by zoning. So people are saying they don't have a car, so they're gonna rent without a car.
And that's fine. So we could make that part of the application process. That, check that box. All right, I have no off-street parking, but I still want to participate in this short-term rental program. So I'm gonna do my very best to rent to individuals that either come here by public transportation.
Not my very best. I will
Well,
either rent to someone that does
Yeah.
not have a car, or I have an agreement with someone and here is the car.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is that we're not excluding people without parking. We're giving people without parking.
They have an option. Yeah.
To rent, so we are changing in other words, what you were saying doesn't really hold true.
Well,
Because
No,
if we weren't going to be making this
Their
change,
site plan, their parking plan that's going to come into us is going to be just that. You still have to present a site parking plan,
unless they don't have parking.
but they still have to present that.
Right, and then their parking plan would be either I'm gonna rent to someone that doesn't have a car, or I have arrangements with so-and-so.
Correct, so what I'm saying
So that
is-
could be the parking plan.
So it isn't proper to say we're gonna follow the zoning, we're changing. Because if you don't have.
No, because on the zoning application, there's a piece for it on parking.
Correct,
Yeah, and you either check off that I have the space and I need relief, or I don't have the space, or I have the space, I don't need relief, or I don't have the space and I need the relief. This would be, I don't have the space, I need the relief. That's how we follow the zoning. There's the option. Yeah,
maybe we're saying the same thing, but it sounds like the other way isn't an option. If you don't have the parking, you don't
Right,
get
no,
the
but
zone.
what this is saying is if you don't have the parking,
You can do
you
this.
can still
Yes.
do it as long as your plan says.
Just wanted to make
Yeah, as
sure
long
what
as
I
your
was
plan
hearing.
says it's gonna be
Yeah.
Uber people only, or I have arrangements for a parking
People who
space.
aren't using a vehicle.
Right, and also this is gonna be one parking space for each unit, right? Each unit, if say they've got 2 units there, we want to park, we want
Bedroom.
to supply for 2.
they would need 2
You know,
spaces.
each unit would be,
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
Bedroom, yeah.
Our ordinance indicated 2 people per bedroom. So if you had 3 bedrooms for rent or availability, and you had three
parking
couples
spaces,
coming in,
yeah.
you would need 3 parking
Yeah.
spaces.
But I thought it was per bedroom. You need one spot per bedroom.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they would, yeah, so our ordinance indicated you could rent 1 bedroom, 2 people. So they wanted to put like 7 people in 1 bedroom.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know.
And then we would go with 1 parking space per bedroom, correct?
There's another, I have a question that's kind of off parking, but it all sort of is related. The purpose of establishing occupancy, a person is defined as an individual at least 12 years of age. So does that mean if you are renting a dwelling and say it's a couple and they have 5 kids under the age of 12, can they, is that, I'm not sure where the arbitrary use of age 12 is, and do smaller people not count? Are they allowed? Are they not allowed?
Ben, did that come off of somebody else's? Do you think when you were making the language?
Doing my research in the municipalities that have either enacted or in the process of enacting, it appears that they all have an age limit. And actually, I've seen up to 18.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was tied into the additional people who might be in the unit are of driving age, because 12 years old is, you're not going to be of driving age until you're 16 and a half
Yeah,
or
I
17.
think
or
it has,
it's just,
it has more, I think it's based more on the building code. As in, because you need a minimum of 200, as it says
Yeah.
further down, 200 square foot per occupant. And they figure, if you've got an infant, he doesn't need the 200 square foot and the under 12. I think that's what it's based on. Do I agree with it in this situation? I'm not sure. It's a little weird.
yeah, for short-term rentals, I mean, if, I would assume that whoever the owner or agent is who's, reviewing and transacting with potential renters, I would hope that the renters would say, I'm coming, it's myself and my partner, and we've got 6 kids under the age of 12, and it'll be cool. And they arrive, or they don't reveal that because they're all under 12. And then they arrive and you've got, a problem on your hand, and you've got a safety issue, and you've got a noise issue, and you've got, and I like kids, but
So what do we do?
Take
yeah,
the age of 12 out.
yeah. So bump that up to,
A person is an occupant, period?
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to
or you have a
infants,
provision that, infants,
Or drop it down to less than 12, but
Less
under
than-
5.
yeah.
Under 5, it's just before they really become pains in the butt.
And I have no idea if I'm bringing up something that isn't an issue at all. I don't run an Airbnb. I don't know if getting, all of the kids in under the line and,
Well, how do hotels deal with 6 kids showing up? Is it a double occupancy?
We're not there yet.
Show up with 6 kids?
I don't know.
I guess we should research it.
Yeah,
Well, but
Gotta be
then
intense.
again, we're not. If they want to run a hotel, run a hotel. Don't run a bed and breakfast as a hotel and say, well, it's a bed and breakfast.
But
It's
I
not a
mean, there
hotel.
has to be an answer in regards to us just arbitrarily picking a 5-year-old versus a 12. To me, it's the same kind of thing. Somebody
Right.
chokes on an apple, the rescue's going, whether they're 9 or 13. So the whole idea of this is to understand the safety and use of the space. I think we need to come up with an answer
Yeah,
other than,
I think
we can
the
look into that.
solicitor is reviewing it right now or looking it up. So that's something that we're going to need to have a better handle on before we go to a second reading, is just identifying whether the,
if I could, though, going back to the parking, because I'm still a tad bit, just a tiny bit confused. I understand that we're going to be allowing for a rental without parking. So does this mean that when we're looking at zoning? Like, would the zoning board now be considering looking at?
No, this has nothing,
applications?
this only applies to short-term rentals. This doesn't change the zoning
Right.
ordinance. It has.
The
doesn't
reason
bring-
I say. it is
Doesn't bring the
because-
zoning ordinance into play at all.
The reason I say this is because someone wrote us a letter and that person's here tonight. If they want to speak on this later in the night, they can. There has been an opinion out there that I've been hearing from multiple people that if this happens and it's too harsh, I then will rent my apartment as an apartment instead of B&B. So I want to understand if we're going to be looking at Uber spaces, take a look at long-term rental and say, like, I have a family member who doesn't even have a driver's license. And probably will never get one till the day he dies. Even after that, he won't have one. So there are people out there who don't even have cars. And I think that we should take a look at how we're dealing with zoning as well. Because if this applies to a short-term rental, what about people who have apartments and rent to people and can't utilize their property? I'd like to get the state. law
Joe, I'm a little
that's changed.
confused.
Joe, they're already there though.
I'm a little
They're already there.
confused. In other words, somebody wants to add an apartment to their house, but they don't have parking?
Right.
And they would have. to go
That
through
comes
zoning.
under the density requirements as well. You
Right,
need so many square foot.
Right, I think we
per
should change
unit.
it. That's what I'm trying to say, is looking, not tonight, but if we're going to be reflecting on current zoning laws, and yet we're not even doing that, we should take a look at all of the current laws and see how they compare, because if
Right.
we're gonna use an example that's not really, I don't like that. Because if we're gonna use an example, we need it to be solid. And this, we're creating an opportunity for people to say, I don't have a car and I'm not bringing a car.
Right, so getting a waiver in a sense.
To some regard,
Yes,
right, but it's-
and I know it's different, but
Well, yeah,
that's
and
what
it's
I was
it's
trying
much
to.
more feasible or reasonable to expect that somebody coming to an Airbnb is not gonna have a car compared to someone that's gonna rent an apartment.
I
I know
understand.
there are people that
I-
rent apartments that don't have cars.
I understand for tonight's discussion, and I'm not trying to get off the subject. I just, that's where I was thinking before when I was trying to make the comparison. And it kind of seemed like, well, we are talking about that, but we're not, because we're creating a different option. So that's just what's.
Right, so
stuck in my
that
head.
would be a completely, that would be a
Correct.
rewrite of the
Completely
zoning
different.
or
But like I said, it was brought to our attention through one of the letters that was written to us, that they feel that if this is too big of a burden, they just will rent their apartment. Well, I'm just trying to
So,
figure
so
out.
the answer to that is if they are legally able to do it, then they can do it tomorrow. If
Correct.
they are not legally permitted to do it, then they would have to go to zoning for relief.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think we should include language to allow people to say, I don't have a car, I don't want a car, I'm never gonna have a car, and I'd like to have the same opportunity. That's
Well,
all.
and
Just
that's-
brought it up tonight because I was
Yeah.
thinking of it
Well,
tonight.
that's exactly what Carrie
All
and
right,
I
let's-
both
Yeah,
mentioned.
let's
exactly.
get back on point. Let's stick to the ordinance we're reading and not what we may be reading in the future.
I just want to ensure that whatever we do here allows for the owners to utilize the opportunity to do short-term rentals, even if they don't have
But the one thing that we really,
parking.
sure,
And that can happen through
correct.
the parking plan. As far as people using the argument that if this becomes so onerous, that they're just gonna, rent their dwelling as a long-term rental. Well, we have a bit of a crunch on housing, and
Yeah,
that it is, I mean, as much as we don't.
that would be
wanna-
more than welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually need the housing. So, as far as, I don't want to see people's ability to, keep their properties and meet their financial burdens. It's also, we need housing. So this wouldn't be specifically to target them, but it wouldn't be the worst thing if we had more long-term rentals, especially downtown,
Yeah,
that were affordable.
and as we discussed last week, but last month, but I'm still totally in favor of you have to be the owner occupant or you don't get it. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I'm looking at this more to help the people who live in a house and are having trouble paying their taxes. This will ease that burden. I am not looking to set up an easy way for people to get around being a hotel and buying a tenement house on Water Street and having 3 bed and breakfast units, that's a hotel. If you don't live there, it's a hotel.
I
There's
don't,
no-
It's that simple. If you don't live there, it's a hotel. It's not a bed and breakfast. It's not a short-term rental. It's a hotel.
But that's not in this ordinance.
No, I'm just saying that I would love to see the wording say you have to be the owner and the
So
occupant,
you're.
not one or the other.
Make a
Both.
motion.
That's a big change from what this is. I mean. it's a
Correct.
Huge change. And I'm not saying
Yep.
I've wavered about that and think it's probably a good idea if you want to gain more control.
Mhm.
So I'm not opposed, but that's not in this ordinance. Would have to.
Right, I mean,
amend
because,
the ordinance.
right, exactly, because the way I look at this is, if you don't live there, this is just giving you free pass to get a hotel without having to go through building codes, fire codes, and zoning.
Well, I was gonna discuss or the agent,
Owner occupant.
right, but we were still.
Right, we had
the
talked about an
discussion isn't
agent.
Closed yet.
Yeah,
Well,
we had
I mean-
talked-
I mean, I guess you're getting.
It's a
on the
local
subject.
representative.
Yeah.
It's called.
All right.
It's called a local representative and
Yeah.
it's number 12.
But see, yeah,
I
but,
guess we're going to that now.
but even with the local representative, that's like the hotel manager.
I agree.
Yeah,
No,
it's still, you're getting around the
Yes.
requirements for a hotel by saying you're a bed and breakfast. But you don't live there, you just bought this to rent it out. That's a hotel.
yeah, I've had people approach me with that very question, like, I live in a multifamily, I rent out the extra unit, I own 2 other dwellings that I rent long-term, and there's short-term rental next to me that is not owner occupied, and it's run like a hotel. Why isn't it a hotel? Like,
Correct.
what's that workaround of? And I know people are making some good money on it, and there are some who are doing it in a very fair, mindful, non-intrusive, they're not creating any problems in their neighborhood, but there are others who are not so responsible, and the door is then open to to problems. So the owner occupied is kind of hardcore, but it would solve.
It also reduces the proliferation of Airbnbs. If
And
you want
it also reduces the problem of unruly tenants, because if you live there, you can nip it in the bud right away instead of
There's
having to
that.
wait till the next morning where we get a hold of your registered agent who didn't answer the phone because he was sleeping.
But to your point, with this ordinance, without the owner occupied aspect of it, you get speculators, essentially. Buying property.
Absolutely.
So, and
Absolutely. And we already
have.
have a few in town.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
On the other hand, the tourism that is, the tourism dollars that come to town because of the access to so many Airbnb beds is really good for the local economy. And I know I personally have benefited a lot from repeat visitors to certain Airbnbs here in town that not all are owner occupied, who are excellent, that they're great customers. They are spending a lot of money in Warren. They are enjoying all that the community has to offer, and it's an asset. So it's a really hard decision to make. There are some very, very good non-owner occupied Airbnb small business people, because that's what it is.
Do we have any data to support and substantiate any of this? Is there any tracking mechanism?
Well, it kind of goes without saying, if they come here for an Airbnb, they're patronizing our local
No, I mean,
businesses.
we're making decisions based on wins. Do we have any data?
Data on what, Joe? What, basically?
Like the numbers, I mean, what Kerry said, I believe her because she's talking about personal experiences, people walking in and buying clothes.
Right.
So how is this impacting the town? Do we have any data? I mean, we're starting to make decisions that are gonna impact people's wallets. I don't even know if these are problems. Are these problems? I'm looking at it from a public safety perspective. I would like to know who's where and that the room that they're in isn't unsafe. That being said, the parking, okay, I can understand. I mean, I bought a house that doesn't even have a parking lot, doesn't even have a parking, nothing. So again, it's like, to me, we're trying to regulate in what regard? Public safety, I can understand that. Nuisances, I can understand that. But once we're going out on this, what about this? What about that? We don't know anything. We really truly don't have any answers. So is there a database? This isn't a funny question I'm asking. Do we have any numbers?
Are you speaking specifically about economic impact of
Number of
Airbnb?
units in town, number of people that come to town, where they're living, what density do we,
How many Airbnbs are there? Like, and
Stuff
how-
like that.
Until we get a
we
registration.
sit here and argue about
Right.
painting
So that,
basketball courts all night, and here we are basing.
Until we get a
Decisions.
registration, we're not gonna know how many there are.
So that's another answer to my question potentially. Do we not have a database?
Absolutely
Right.
nothing.
the-
That gentleman's raising his hand.
Yeah, sorry, but all that data is actually public. You can go on something like airdna.co. There's a lot of different data aggregators that, do market data for.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that the state law now requires registration with the state for Airbnbs. That registration opened October 1st. I believe everything needs to be filed with the state by December 1st, and we'll have access to that information. I don't know to what detail we'll have information, but at least we'll know who's registered with the state.
We'll have a number.
Right.
Is there a deadline for the registration?
I believe it's December 1st. It might be the end of December. I'll have to double check that.
I would feel comfortable with, I mean, I have no problem discussing these things, but I really do feel like we're trying to hit a target that's moving. And if there's some data that's coming in, I wouldn't mind having access to it before we make some of these final
Well,
decisions.
the way I'm looking is we could always amend this.
Of course.
And I'm looking at it more from a public safety and a quality of life standpoint than an economic standpoint. I think that the quality of life and the public safety outweigh. If there is an economic benefit to it, I don't think that outweighs the public safety and the quality of life. I think that's the most important of the issues. So,
And that's where I come from, but I'm not hearing that we have a public safety concern. I do know that it's $17,500 a year for a child to go through our school system. If somebody's renting an apartment and making money and paying taxes on it and not putting somebody in the school system, there's already 17.5 that we could put on the plus side. I don't have any of this data to make these decisions on, so I think that this is a great starting point, but I think we have a lot of unknowns that we're trying to figure out how it fits Warren. And once this data comes to us, I think it'd be helpful.
Right.
That's all.
Mr. President,
yes.
just looking at who's in the audience, I recognize a couple of faces who have been doing this for a while. I think it might not be a bad idea at this point
Once the
to
council.
hear.
once the
Yeah,
council's
no.
done, I was gonna call them forward. Yeah.
Exactly, because I kind of agree that there's a lot more information that we need, and I wouldn't be opposed to hearing the rest of what we have to say, hearing what they have to say, and then maybe not rushing to make a decision without all of the information.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Any-
Joe, I think there's a reason why this is in front of us, and that's because there's been a proliferation of Airbnbs, not necessarily in Warren, but there's a shortage of units. There's excessive demand, and it's coming.
I
So
understand that,
That's,
but some
I
of
think
the,
that's, you see other communities, Newport did it, Warwick's grappling with it. Many communities are doing it, and they're doing it for a reason, because they're seeing what could happen. And they're trying to put something in place so that at least there's some controls.
Is anybody capping the number, like using some sort of formula, ratio, number of households, whatever? doing
I've
any
seen
kind of
some
cap?
that cap at 2% of the residences. I mean, and that's just an arbitrary number, I think. So, yeah, some do.
And it does eat up, full-time housing stock,
Yes, it does.
which is a problem to start,
Yeah.
So going unchecked, it's gonna make that problem even worse.
And
why is
it
that?
drives prices up too.
Right,
It
absolutely.
drives prices up, and that's a fact.
I know, but we're hypothesizing about very specific data that can or cannot make something good or bad. I feel uncomfortable with all that guessing in regards to
Can I ask a
cost
Yeah.
associated in numbers and all that. I mean, I don't know, numbers.
Yeah, so if I may, I just have a quick question. Kate, do you know if whether or not the state is going to do a meals and rentals tax database where these short-term rentals have to register?
So yes, they will have to register. And right now, we receive data on what the aggregate tax receipts for third-party rentals, short-term rentals.
Okay.
But they won't break it out per
So-
taxpayer.
I
It's just an
believe
aggregate
I
number.
spoke about this, and I'll be very, very brief, because the state of New Hampshire kind of pivoted a little bit. Years ago, they've been having the Department of Business Regulation, Taxation in the state of New Hampshire, where you had to register your short-term rental with this agency if you were going to do short-term rentals in the state. And you would collect revenue, and then every month you would have to pay the tax that you collected. And if you didn't pay it, they'd send you a notice and they, remind you, please file. Airbnb, the company of Airbnb, actually pays the tax to the state of New Hampshire. And I think they paid a tax to every 50 states that participate in the Airbnb program. VRBO, the other platform where folks register on for these rentals, just started doing that in the state of New Hampshire. So to answer Councilman DePasquale's question and the other concerns that the other council folks have, is that the state of Rhode Island, this is the infancy of them doing this now. But once the Department of, whatever they're going to call it, the Meals and Rentals Tax Division, once it gets up and running, all that data will be able to be out there and afford, and we'll get our revenue share. Because truth be told, I think that's what we're really all talking about, is what's the revenue share? Is the tax going to be 7%, 9% for the state, and then we're going to get a portion of that?
So there's a 1% local tax that we would receive.
We would receive, okay.
The short-term rentals do not pay the full hotel tax that a standard hotel would pay. But they will be responsible for the 1% share, which is what would come to the town.
Yeah, okay. And so once that gets up and running and you register with that when you want to do your short-term rental programs, we could have our local database here to monitor, what do we got, about 4,200 residents in the town. If 3% of them are going to do short-term rentals, or 10%, we would know we have somewhere between 200 and 400 people operating that. And then with our database, we would also be able to collect the information that I have a 3-bedroom house, I have a 5-bedroom house, or I have a 2-bedroom house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which would provide us all that information. And then we could even probably break it down, not to give Fung any more work. She could show us, like at the end of the year or quarterly, hey, we got $4,200 from short-term rentals in revenue collection on the months of June, July, and August.
Right, the state will report that to us, just like they report the meals tax. So
Yeah.
we'll get monthly reports. Typically, it's 4 or 5 months in arrears. The reporting
Yeah.
takes a little while to come out, but we will receive monthly reports.
I just did the math real quick. Let's say an Airbnb grosses $12,000 in a year. I just picked a nice round number.
Easy number.
Okay, you know how much money comes back to us through the meals and tax? $9.60.
No, it should be more than that.
No, it's $9.60. You get the 8%, and we get 1% of the 8, correct? $9.60 comes to the town on 12,000.
All right, so I can go on the record to tell you that I am not looking at this from a revenue perspective for the town at all. I'm looking at this from quality of life. I don't think that we should be restricting people's cars to park here or there if we're looking for revenue. I don't think somebody should have to live in the house if they have an agent in town. I think we need some real
Yeah.
discussion points.
I
here.
wasn't looking at it for revenue. I just wanted everybody to realize that it's, that 1% is not that much.
Well, that's what I,
Yeah. And I agree with the quality of life issue, and
That
I'm
doesn't
telling
even
you,
cover one rescue.
right now, if we don't do
when we-
something on parking, just let me finish. If we don't do something on parking, we're gonna hear some quality of life issues, people screaming that our neighborhoods are clogged with these short-term rentals.
Yep.
So I agree 100% that quality of life should be at the top of the list, and we have to listen to what these neighborhoods are saying. I have people yelling at me now that 15 cars are parked in front of their street because of a short-term rental house.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna ask the public, anything else from the council?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we understand that it's a quality of life as well as a quality of an economic development perspective as well. That's the quality of life. People get elected all the time saying they're in favor of economic development. We have some people who are trying to pay the bills. And I think that we need to come up with a policy that accurately identifies the problem before we try to solve them. And that's why I want some data.
Okay. I'm
Thank
gonna have the public come up. When you come up, please state your name and your address and Who wants to go first? Anybody?
Well, Mr. Seabento was at the,
Oh,
yeah, okay.
he wasn't in a sprint, so I guess he wants to wait.
Hi, Bradley Vogelton, 7 Summer Street. First off, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak. I like where the discussion is going, actually. I was a little nervous coming in and reading the first draft of what I found to be a very overly restrictive ordinance that would shut me down, and my feeling was that it would shut probably 80% of the owner occupied operations in town down as well, just based off of the town that we live in, the available parking to a lot of the houses that we have. If I could give a little insight as to where I came from and how I came to live in Warren, I owned a bungalow with my wife in Rehoboth prior to 2017. And it became unaffordable to us for reasons out of our control. And the previous job applicant asked the question about, what is home affordability? What is affordable housing? Well, I think it's opportunity, and some of the restrictions in this ordinance is stripping that opportunity from a lot of people in town that want to live here, that want to invest here, that want to participate in the community here. So I would like to offer a little bit of a perspective. I know that I have a biased opinion on this, but so in 2017, the Tourister Mill was in the middle of reconstruction. The steel warehouse was at the end of Summer Street, and that was being shut down. And this property comes up available on the market at 11 Summer Street. My wife at the time sent me a photo of it, and I'm like, no, that's not bad. The warehouse at the end, I don't like. There's tractor trailers all over the place. I don't like that. I went on Google Maps. I saw that the house next door, 7 Summer Street, was a hoarder house, and the whole backyard was full of crap. You can still see it on Google Maps today. Well, we got word that there was going to be some development going on at the Tourister Mill. We got word that maybe that steel warehouse was going to be coming down. So the opportunity was turning in my head, well, this might be a good thing. We could maybe turn this into something. There was a previous Airbnb running out of that house from the previous owner. So we thought, well, maybe we could run that Airbnb to help us afford this house, make the down payment and get it going. So we crunched some numbers and we put an offer in. We bought the house. That was 2017. We lived through the hell of the Tourister Mill renovation. That was quite an experience. And then a year later, 2018, we turned on the Airbnb. The first day we're getting bookings. So it's a good problem that we have here today, that people want to come to this town. They want to come to this community. They want to spend their money here. And we have people that want to live here. So 2018 was exciting. It was fun. We were meeting people from all over the world coming to our little 2-bedroom apartment that we were renting out. And it allowed us to pay off debt from our losses from our previous house in Rehoboth. It was a great year. It's exciting. Australia, China, Japan, France. Some of our best guests were from France. They wanted to hang out in the backyard all the time and chat with their families and stuff. So it was great. And what we found was most times than not, they would show up in a single vehicle. Every once in a while, it'd be more than one vehicle, but more often it would be by Uber, not 2 vehicles or not even 1 vehicle. But we had no way of knowing that in advance. We have no way of collecting that data in advance. A lot of times they wouldn't even have that information in advance until they arrived in state and went to the local rental company, got the car. So managing that part of it, I find might be a little difficult for the hosts and also the information to the town. So 2018 was a good year for us running the Airbnb. 2019 was even better. we had this derelict house next door, number 7 Summer Street. And it's got me thinking, well, this thing's going pretty good. We love this town. We love sending people all over the town, restaurants, shops, parks, everything. It was great, right? So we put in an offer on the house next door. Let's use this money to restore this house next door. And that's what we started doing. And it's been a long go, but we're getting close. The house is almost done. And it's because of this opportunity that was put in front of us that allowed us to use our home, to use our investment, to offer it to other people, to offer it back to our family when we weren't running it to other people, to let them come in and visit us, and to expand gradually from there and try to make this little part of our town better. And I think that's what we've really been trying hard to do. So my unique situation with number 7 Summer Street now is that it has no parking. And the restrictions on the ordinance as it is written now, and like I said, I like where this discussion is going, is that I would like to see some sort of owner occupancy, maybe not a requirement, but something in the ordinance where it supports those types of operators, where it lifts them up above the rest to help encourage that type of investment in town, to encourage that type of commitment to the town to upgrade their properties, to make them look better, to increase the tax rolls for the town, to increase the economic opportunity for others in town, that we can send those, our guests, to you as well. So there's a lot going on. I'd like to just open up some eyes about the perspective. And if this is a quality of life thing, I'm telling you, this thing made our quality of life incredibly better in a very short amount of time. And it's allowed us to do a lot with what we had, with the little that we had. So I know that there's an issue in towns around us. Newport is a huge one. I hear it all the time about some of the stuff going on down there where outside companies, developers are gobbling up all the available housing, throwing the markets crazy high where no one locally can afford it. That kind of stuff needs to stop. We need smart ordinances, smart regulations that can cap that, limit that kind of stuff in this town. I fully support that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we need to be smart. We need the data. Where is the data? Well, the data is available if you look for it and you reach out for it. You can get numbers of rents, nights per week, guests per night, all that kind of stuff is out there. It's available. And that was one of my biggest questions is where is this data that you're basing these decisions off of? Let's not rush to push this thing through just for the sake of all the other towns around us are doing it. I understand that we need to get out in front of some of this kind of stuff, but let's get people involved. I'm a little concerned that I hope there's other hosts here or that are chiming in on this, or that they're even aware of this is going on tonight, because it could have huge impacts on their livelihoods, their quality of life, if something is pushed through without really thinking about it. And I think one other point I would like to make that sticks out to me specifically is Council President John Hanley even just self-admitted that this is a parking problem and that more people, that there's going to be more cars for full-time rentals. I think I heard you say. That you agree that there would be less cars coming to town for short-term rentals versus full-time rentals.
Correct.
Okay, so using that logic, this parking requirement is counterproductive.
You wouldn't be able to do it because you wouldn't meet zoning, so you wouldn't get the full-time rental. So no, it's not.
For new operations, for new hosts trying to come into the market, or new developers, if you want to call them developers, versus owner operators, I think maybe is what you're stating. But
No,
anyway, my
but what I'm stating is a full-time rental is probably gonna have at least one car, whereas Airbnb may not have any, may have
Okay.
one.
So my.
But you would not, an Airbnb doesn't require that second unit requirement from zoning. So you wouldn't, so in other words, if you're doing an Airbnb, doesn't automatically mean it could be a full-time rental,
Right.
because if you don't meet density,
Okay.
you're not getting that second unit.
So my point from my perspective, and what I found while running the Airbnb, which by the way, when COVID hit, it shut us down. We had the entire year booked out and it was looking to be a beautiful year. For us, it was different than the year prior. We were actually getting longer stays. We were seeing 2, 3, and 4 different groups staying for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days, 40 days. And it was like, oh my God, this is perfect for us this year because we have work that needs to happen on the house next door. We don't want to have to do all the changeover and all that kind of stuff. So it was, really don't know. And it's another point is that you don't know who you're going to attract. to
What's
come to your
considered a
thing.
short-term rental?
Under 30 days. Yep.
And we can't put that requirement. The way that these systems are set up, these platforms, if you will, Airbnb, VRBO, you can't really easily state, I'm going to only rent to you if you don't have a car. Okay, so I know there was some talk about that. That would be difficult to put that on the host. It could be done, but it's not really reasonable, in my opinion. The other thing is back to the parking. A short-term rental parking, if you're saying that you're going to require 1 car per bedroom to park off street. From my experience, that rarely happened where we would have 2 cars per bed or 1 car per bedroom. Okay, we have a 2-bedroom unit that we're looking at turning on again with the short-term rental if possible. And my whole point is that if I'm forced to say that I can no longer, because of this parking restriction, that I can no longer do short-term rentals for my second unit in my home, then I'm going to be forced to find some other way to recoup that investment, recoup that income, which means I'm more than likely have to turn that into a full-time rental, which isn't a bad thing for the town, right? But if you're saying that your argument is all about parking, then you're going in the wrong direction by doing that. Because that means I'm going to probably rent to 1 person, probably 2 people. They're probably each going to have a vehicle and they're going to be each parking on the street all year round. Versus possibly renting short-term, semi-seasonally throughout the year. More than likely, they're only going to have 1 vehicle parking on the street instead. And it's only going to be for part of the year.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Hanley, of you as well. So this is interesting because you bought a house that has no parking.
Correct.
You bought that from a realtor.
Well, we bought it from the previous owner.
So because I just bought a house too, and I bought it from the owner. So nothing in that transaction asked me if there was parking.
You didn't have to.
That's what I'm saying. No, nobody.
But you didn't, but in that transaction, you weren't looking to change what you were
I
buying.
understand that, but we keep referring to the current zoning laws, which is an interesting thing in my mind. I'm still not totally over it yet, because he bought a house just like me. I've got 2 grown boys. Nothing is stopping them from living with me.
Correct.
Okay, I have no parking lot. I have no off-street space. Now I have 3 adults living in my house, totally legal. And all of a sudden it becomes a question if you're going to rent it out. And yet we're hearing that there is opportunity for
Right.
people without cars.
The first part of his story is exactly, I think, what Airbnbs were designed for. Okay, now I actually have a question for you. Do you, the second house you bought, do you have any parking there?
So the first house, 11 Summer Street, it actually was unique. It had 3 off-street parking spots.
Okay, which one do you have the Airbnb at?
Well, currently none,
Okay,
but the whole plan was to purchase the house next door and transition the Airbnb to that house. But now that house has no parking.
so
So
where
it's
you are right now, you have parking. And that's where you ran the Airbnb.
Well, it's a difficult story. I would love to talk to you offline about it.
Do you have, does 11 Summer Street have any parking?
It does, but it's no longer in my possession.
It's
Okay.
irrelevant.
Actually, can I just jump in here? Particularly in the area the town that we're talking about, with all that mill housing, they're prior non-conforming uses.
Right.
Yes,
And the difficulty here is you're going to be changing the use from a residential use. Now you're going to be changing it to essentially a rental in a commercial use based on your zoning ordinance, because it's a change of use, although it's a lawful change of use. The grandfathering is lost, and that's why I think it's appropriate to talk about parking,
Correct.
because there is a legal component here. And in terms of zoning to this, because you have a prior non-conforming use as a residential use, and now it's shifting over to a commercial use. Mr. Di Pasquale's property would be exempted from that because it was a commercial use. He's moving from one commercial use to another. That would be a determination by the building official as to whether or not it's a more intensive use.
Okay.
Well, that's good that you actually brought that language in, because I wasn't thinking of the non-conforming aspect, and that's why I kept like a stumbling block and trying to figure out how we're doing a comparative analysis, but that's what it is.
they've legally.
They're
non-conforming.
legally non-conforming,
legal
and that's why, so
non-conforming
this is what is
Yeah.
the catalyst that's changing the.
But when the
use. I
legally
get it now.
non-conformity gets changed is when you want to change the legally non-conforming use, if you wanted to go from 2 units to 3 units.
Well,
That's
no,
correct.
Yeah,
this is-
That's correct.
No.
But this is actually impacting anywhere, not just somebody
Yes.
individually on their property if they wanted to make it a change.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I hate to interrupt you.
No.
But just to your point on all this, tonight, another town council is discussing this type of an ordinance down in Tiverton. And the proposal down there is to require a special use permit for all Airbnbs. And it goes to this very point. And not to say that that's the correct way to go, but just by way of a reference point. That's how another community is proposing to handle this very discussion that you
And
have.
if we were to choose to do that, then it would end up in zoning's lap.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yes.
Could we put it just if you don't meet the parking requirements, then you can petition for a special use permit? In other words, don't make everyone go for a special use. If you meet the parking.
We could wiggle and waggle and I think we could get that done.
Okay.
Mr. DeSisto, were you here when the discussion was taking place about non-driving Uber people?
He wasn't here then.
So there was a
No.
discussion earlier about having an opportunity for people who don't have parking, who would like to be able to rent to people with bicycles or feet or Uber.
Interesting.
Yeah, there to place restrictions on a good Airbnb host who might be renting to tenants who are coming without cars and insisting that they have to go through the special use permit application through zoning is, and then they are restricted to only renting to people, or can we use this parking plan as an option? And the parking has to, we have to figure this out. We have to make this work. I mean, after being at the planning meeting last Monday night about this proposed comprehensive permit application at 119 Water Street, parking was the topic of the night, and parking is an issue downtown. So we have to make this work without being without over penalizing good hosts and yet preserving safety, quality of life, and the opportunity to.
I'll just finish up and then I'll let you guys, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate the opportunity. I spoke at that meeting last week, so this parking situation is important to me. I just want to make sure that we get it right. I want to make sure that there's an opportunity for a review if needed for people that don't have that off-street parking, whether that's a creative plan that works for everybody. That's what I would like to see. And again, Thank you for the opportunity to discuss it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Anybody else want to come up?
Dennis, give a chance to let somebody sprint up and cheat on.
Dennis Silventro, Brownell Street in Warren, Rhode Island. My concerns are having unoccupied Airbnbs and short-term rentals. I have had experiences with rentals and short-term rental in Twisted. I brought that issue before the zoning board. They were in violation of the R40 zoning, changing a home residential unit into a commercial space. At that particular time, the individual that rented that apartment, we'll start with the parking situation. That particular property has space legally for 2 and illegally for 3. This property was rented on a short-term basis. There were approximately, was 4 bedrooms. So it allowed 8 people to live in the apartment and the house. But about 15 people showed. Some showed by Uber and others drive by car. So you had a combination of riders. What ensued after that was loud music, drinking, trespassing, jumping off of other people's docks, using other people's kayaks. The police did not respond because I addressed the issues with the individuals and it got confrontational because of their alcohol content. And my wife, being prudent enough, told me to withdraw, and I did. And some of them drove away fast. I'm in Twisted. As you know, the area in Twisted, the roads are very small. And so that issue didn't resolve itself, but it just quieted down a little bit. There was much damage to the property, some damage to the abutting property owners. Another occasion, a few years ago, where a similar incident occurred on the 4th of July, where some people rented a house on the other side of me. And that particular issue resulted in confrontation, swearing. Police responded. I had to assist with my cousin who was staying at the house on the 4th of July with one of the dogs that was attacking the police officer. All the police responded. The people there at that house, except for the one individual that was confrontation into a fight, he was arrested, charged. The others dispersed and left. That individual that was arrested and charged kicked out the window of the police cruiser and caused substantial damage, and the police officer was subsequently hurt. After that person was convicted, I had to get a restraining order, a no contact order criminally, to get him to not come into the neighborhood any longer. That property was since sold, and the other property is since sold. So, agreeing with Mr. Hanley, I think short-term rentals are required, should be required to have an owner presence. Having a management addressing the issue of that aspect of it, I think is a nice concept, but it doesn't work if you're an abutting property owner and you have people doing things, trespassing, doing damage to other property. You're going to call a management guy, you're going to call an individual who may not answer and respond. In the meantime, they continue to get boisterous and causing problems in the area. Secondly, in Twisted, we're on a 365-day-a-year water restriction. We have 2 wells that supply water to approximately 70 homes. We're not allowed to water our grass, wash our cars, excessive water. Most of us have rain-catching barrels that connect the water, collect the water to water your outside plants. Then when there are many children in the neighborhood that are walking around, riding their bikes, people walking up and down the street, those are narrow. God forbid anything happened to any of those children. And in the past 2 years, 2 animals, 2 personal pets were injured. Could have been by construction trucks, could have been by anybody, but no one took ownership to that. Both dogs sustained substantial injury. One of them lost one of their legs. Moving forward from that. A lot of the homes have these fire cauldrons in their yards. So if you were to have an unoccupied rental in an Airbnb, someone starts to light a fire, as you are all aware of, the fire department miraculously saved the community in 2 really huge fires recently. So having said all of those things, those are the concerns that I have for that area of the town. Fire, trespassing, damage, water use, and having the confrontational issues with unruly guests. I think you should have, short-term rentals should be owner occupied. Any questions from the council?
You keeping Twisted safe?
Hopefully, I don't know. It depends what you guys do after tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Come on down.
Oh, as I might add, I sent out an email, and I have the support of other residents in the community. The last time I had the hearing, the zoning board was will be aware of the fact that I had approximately 70 people here present to support me in this endeavor.
Thank you.
That wasn't the crowded zoning meeting, but it was one of the close ones, though.
I want to hold back.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Raymond Steinmetz. I live at both, 31 Terrace Avenue, and then I also have 40 Washington Street as well. So for me, who's full-time business now, I emailed all of you. My full-time business now is both short and long-term rentals. I'm more concerned about the feasibility of actually how do I jump through these hoops, right? Specifically, I'm looking at this draft, and as an owner, is there going to be a checklist for compliance? Who's coming to inspect my properties? Is there something, am I going to have substantial personal financial loss because of this? Do I need to build another parking lot? Do I need to, there's a lot that goes into it. I've already, along with my friend here, spent a substantial amount of money refurbishing a home and getting it to the point where I can rent it long and short term. So you're putting another onus on the community members who are bringing people into the community to spend their money. So I need to know a little bit more about, specifics. And I think without data, the draft looks great, but from an owner perspective, what do I do next? I don't have you need to do X, Y, and Z. Also, is this just duplicating what the state is offering? So you're telling me as a short-term renter, I need to get a 2-year license from the state and a 1-year license from the town. So it seems like there might be some duplication there of the different licenses. Also, from my perspective, I do have people coming in town from all over the world and coming in cars and parking on the street. And I haven't had a single issue in the years that I've done it. And, if it changes, then I'll have to take on the financial, take on, building more spaces and everything like that. But I feel like 1 space per 2 people might be a little stringent for a long-term or a short-term rental, because then you're talking about, I would say the majority of people coming in town are families with minivans full of people. And, I just think that most people have more than 2 people per car. And I just think that 1 space for 2 people is a little stringent. And also reading the draft, do the guests need to register their car with the town? So what if, let's say someone from New York.
They'd be registered with you.
Okay, so someone from New York comes into town.
Yep.
If they're staying in an Airbnb, then they need to register their car. And if they drive somewhere else and park on the street, then they're subject to,
Right now,
because they're
not
staying
sub-
with me,
they're not
or
subject to
because they're
anything
visiting
right
a
now.
business down the street,
Yeah.
or.
They're not subject to anything right now because. they're
Yeah,
in
but
the car.
I'm saying it's a little wishy-washy for my guests. They have to register with me and only park in my driveway, but then they go to a different part of town and park on the street.
Then they're a visitor to one.
Yeah, they visit a
Yeah,
one.
but that's.
Yeah.
And they have a right for that parking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The public, what we're.
but I'm
trying to-
saying like,
Let me give you a little bit of an answer. These guys can correct me if I'm wrong from a zoning perspective. From a public usage, the public spaces are available to everybody. Once we start to identify a single use to a public spot to you, it's no longer available to everybody. So that's the moving target that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And that's like in my situation personally, I depend on public parking. I found out that I was, grandfathered in, non-conforming use. So it's interesting. The whole dynamic is interesting because now imagine the scenario where your guests come into town and they have family that lives in the town next door. So they all come here, they don't register with you, they're registering with you, the 2 people. But now 12 people come to visit for grandma's birthday, and now those are all public visiting Warren. No different than if somebody said, hey, let's just go to a restaurant. So we're trying to figure out how to put 100 people into 50 parking places and identify now specific use. So
Yeah, I think identifying the specific use is.
for
tough.
public spots is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
it's tough because, I mean, the enforcement, again, is an issue. I mean, I want the checklist of things that I need to do. I need to know who's coming to inspect my place, and I need to know the possible ramifications of that.
Which property is your B and B, Washington or Terrace?
Both.
Both. Okay. So you're gonna, the owner operating will hurt you. Now, are they owned by an LLC or are they owned by you?
I mean,
Okay, so there's not an LLC, no limited liability corporation that owns the property?
no,
Okay,
but I have an umbrella clause to protect myself.
for insurance purposes. Yeah, okay.
I talked to my accountant, my particular situation, I don't need an LLC.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you want to sit down and talk about it.
No, I'm not saying that you have to have an LLC. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if it was
Yeah.
owned by an LLC.
Probably meeting with you guys individually wouldn't hurt us information gathering as well.
Yeah.
At least for me. I mean,
Yeah.
But
you
I,
can get different sides of this whole
I've
issue.
heard also that, you,
Resource.
you have no way of knowing what vehicles are coming to your place. In other words, right? you
I
said-
can
you
ask for
said
that information.
Yeah, that's not completely accurate because,
Right,
and
yeah.
so full disclosure, I do this, I do it in the state of New
What are
Hampshire,
you gonna say?
okay?
Mhm.
So I'm with you, but
No,
as
so I
jumping
wanna
through
hear-
hoops, the state of Rhode Island, nothing like what I had to jump through
Yeah.
New Hampshire. But you figure it out and you just do it because you want to be compliant. And that's what I'm looking for because, the folks with the parking and stuff, they may talk to you once, but they talk to us 1,000 times
Mhm.
about the parking, the density, the congestion. What are you guys doing about this? So we hear you and we're listening, but the compliance is the compliance,
Mhm.
He brings up a great point, though. So they're not allowed to park in front of his house, but they can go around the corner and park in front of the restaurant. How are you gonna enforce that? You're saying that they're not allowed to park in front of his property.
Well,
we're not saying any of that.
That's
We're not saying
yeah.
anything,
We're
yeah.
not saying any of that.
We're trying to figure out how to alleviate the problem.
Yeah.
Brant, you had a question?
Well, it just, the idea that you don't know who's coming in what vehicle, so it's very difficult. You have a parking plan and, I mean. you
So
don't-
I'd like to answer that question, actually. So, I could ask for that information.
Yes.
I could send them to some sort of registration that you're going to have for my guests to register with the town somehow. I recently went to Washington DC this summer with my family and stayed in an Airbnb. And I parked on the street and I had to register with the city and everything like that. But that's a very big city, so
Yes.
it's very different. But yeah, I mean, people care about where they put their cars when they come into town. And, that is an extra step that I would have to take to say, how many cars are you bringing? And
So when you registered in Washington, was that also the ability to obtain a spot? So
No.
So it wasn't like you registered and got
It was just like a zone for the neighborhood I live in.
Just
or
do
I
it through
stay
your
in.
phone? Through the phone? Was it on an app or?
so it didn't guarantee you a public spot is what I was
No.
asking. It's
No.
not like-
Yeah, just to wrap up. But the gentleman asked, well, I've got to do things with the state, now I have to do things with the town. It's duplicative. It really isn't. The state, the law that we're operating under basically says you can't prohibit short-term rentals from hosting platforms. There's registration requirements for that, But the reason for that is so the state can collect their taxes.
Yes, state wants their
This
money.
is a land use ordinance. Because what happens is, you know, when there's problems, and I know them, thankfully, there's no problems with you and no problems with you, but there has been problems in the state. And there are issues that we need to discuss that affect permanent residents here that are taxpayers.
Mhm.
That's what this ordinance is. It's a land use ordinance. So, you know, businesses in town, they have requirements that they have to do, and this is a business too. Is it duplicative for the state? No, it isn't.
Okay.
This is to protect the residents of the town, and that's why we're discussing this, so that the uses can be compatible and everybody can get along. So it's not something with the state.
Mr. President. So I'm on Airbnb right now, and I'm not just, texting or anything.
I would say earlier.
I'm on Airbnb right now, and I search for a place in downtown Warren, just as two adults. And all of the amenities that are offered in this place, shampoo, hair dryer, that's cool. But the kitchen, the location features, parking and facilities, free parking on premises, free street parking. That's for this particular resident. So this is getting to a question. So as a host, do you have, I don't know what your drop down options are when you fill this out to describe what it is that you're offering.
Yeah,
But is there,
we make those pages, or we
right,
manage those pages. So yes, I can say I have on-site parking or off-site parking.
so there is an opportunity, because we have been discussing the availability or the expectation that if you don't have off-street parking, that you can submit a parking plan that would give the renter an option for parking off-site, not requiring any parking at all, or parking elsewhere in town where there is free parking. But that's just not on this one, but that is an option. So for your Washington Street, so you don't have parking, or you do have parking on Washington?
Well, there's 3 parking spaces, but my long-term renters use them. And so my short-term renters park on the street in front of the house.
Okay. So going forward, depending on what language and how we work through this, once we have all of the data and the information, you may be creating the part of your profile saying no off-street parking available. A parking plan is required. I'm just trying to figure out how this would.
How would I
this would be-
communicate that to my
Communicate
guests?
that to your guests, because I've heard from both of you that sometimes you don't know what is coming. So
Yeah.
to communicate in a clear way, we can't be the only place that's having this conversation.
Yeah, it's
Communicate it saying you can't park your car on site. There is no non-resident parking on the street,
Mhm.
but we do have an option here for you, or these are the options.
I have a suggestion on this. You definitely need more data. That's the first thing. While we're getting that data that you requested, we can also reach out to the people that are here, including Mr. Seobento, by the way, who had some very good comments, so that we can get a better perspective on the business model
Mhm.
for this, and hopefully incorporate that into subsequent drafts. Would that be acceptable to the council?
Yes.
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 All right, last thing, sorry. As far as your question about kids, let's say someone's 2 parents and 4 kids, right? That's 6 people staying at my house, even if it's an infant. So, but I do have, a room with a queen bed and a crib. That would be 3 people in a room.
Mhm.
So it does get a little wishy-washy with the kids, and I think that the language of 12 years old is a little weird. I wasn't really sure how to take that from a perspective of how do I communicate that to my customers? Like, you can pack in the kids under 12, but above 12, you can't.
Do
like,
you
they're a
charge,
person.
do you charge extra for kids?
No,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm trying to get
Nope,
back
that
to
would
the
be
part where I got to tap in and say who I was, and I just put 2 adults and I didn't fill in anything for kids, but I wonder if I kept on adding kids, if it would say, sorry, you're not welcome.
I think that's one of the issues though that we need to address.
Yeah.
With you all. So
Yeah,
that's what we should
because-
do.
You know, on paper, the 12-year-old thing seems a little weird, but then in practice, with people actually staying, and we do have a lot of families staying with us, primarily families. You know, we want to be clear about how many people are actually able to stay in the unit.
Okay, let's get your information so that we can contact you. And thank you very
Yeah.
much for coming.
Really helpful. Thank you all.
Thank
So
you.
the manager has heard how we are looking to proceed. I just want to say one more thing and we're going to move this. I am extremely heavy on the owner occupant. That's what an Airbnb is supposed to be. If it's not owner occupied, it's a business, it's a hotel. That's not what it came around for. That's not what it's supposed to be. I am extremely heavy on the owner occupant, and that's it. And an LLC can't be an owner. So that's where I'm definitely leaning. And I don't think you're gonna sway me on that. Otherwise, you can just go get a hotel.
All right, I want to make a motion to continue this, to get more information.
I think we may have somebody else from the public that wanted to speak.
Was there someone else from the public?
I
Sure.
just saw a hand go up. Yes.
Come on up.
Mr. Solicitor. I may have to recuse. These are relatives of mine, and I did not see them in the audience until just now. Okay, so I am going to recuse from further discussions while.
You don't have
You
to.
don't- Sure?
No.
Okay, all right. I apologize. I didn't see you until just now.
I thought you did too.
No, I didn't. I was just like, I'm like, oh,
But the relationship is actually is my wife's second.
Yeah.
My wife's second cousin.
That's probably the uncomfortable part.
yeah. Well, welcome. Hi, Lillian. Yeah.
My name is Barry Hawkins.
On edge.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your.
Barry Hawkins.
Nice.
I reside in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And my wife Lillian is the owner of property in Warren, Connecticut, in Warren, Rhode Island. And we're in a very interesting position of repositioning property that has been in the family for over 100 years. And has been, and most recently used for long-term rentals. The long-term rentals, by the way, had more drivers, more cars, and created many problems. But one of the things that we're thinking about is doing an Airbnb. And of course, we won't be owner occupants in that sense because we will still continue to reside in Connecticut, although we come to Rhode Island very regularly. A couple of things that you ought to know. One of them is on parking. Most of the management companies that provide a host position for advertising short-term like VRBO and Airbnb, many of them have contracts in which they will not take on a property and be responsible for running that property unless the owner of the property says that they will have a on-site parking per unit. So one car lot per rental unit is required by those companies to take that property on. So they're aware of the issue. We're in a very fortunate position. We have lots of parking rooms. We have the ability to provide parking for multiple people to come to an Airbnb. It would be in our personal advantage over the disadvantage of the Water Street area because we do have an advantage of parking and we could provide on-site parking for as many people as we need. But I think it needs to be balanced. It has to be fair. It has to be recognized that the Airbnb trend is really already in Warren. We went online to Airbnb and to VRBO, put out a request, how many Airbnb units are available within 10 miles of Town Hall? 305. You already have 305 Airbnb units within 10 miles of this building. We just wanted to know what the competition would be like. That concern about competition has led us to do some further thinking about what does it mean for Warren? What does it mean to Newport? We went to Newport and spent a weekend in Newport, actually spent 2 weekends in Newport, and realized what a tremendous boon it has been. But it's a boon without, it's a mixed blessing for them. They're crowded, their parking problems are enormous, their traffic problems are enormous. I said, what is so attractive about Warren? Well, Warren is unique in the sense that it is a much smaller scale than Newport. It doesn't have those problems now, and yet it's become a great destination for foodies, for people that want to come to the Water Street, like the vibe of Warren. So as we walk the streets over the last couple of days, we've been working on this property to bring it into compliance, make sure that it would be available, it would be acceptable as an Airbnb if that's what we decide to do. And in walking the streets and in eating breakfast and lunch and dinner in Warren, because we're not, not really ready to start cooking in this property while we're working on it. We ended up talking to a number of people, and I began to recognize, I started just looking at them on the street. Well, these look like people that are sort of visitors to Warren. And we went up and started talking to them because they were obviously looking for something. And we talked to them a little bit. They were from Seattle. They came here from Newport because they found out in Newport that Warren is part of the Newport package that they advertised. And they were just blown away by the charm of this town. And we think it would be a marvelous advantage for Warren to have more people be able to stay in Airbnbs as long as it's reasonably balanced and doesn't harm the qualities that make Warren what it is. Having parking problems like you have on Water Street is a real problem. We think it would be to our advantage to keep Warren the way it is and not have it turn into a Newport-like problem. So I'm not against, and my wife is not against having regulations, but we think the regulations need to be balanced. They need to be sensible. They need to be based upon data that is available. And you can make the smart decisions that will bring people to Warren, provide more tours to eat meals in your facilities, to buy products from your town, from the stores in the town. We think that it could be a real advantage to Warren to not only have Airbnbs, but to facilitate them in a way which is smart zoning based upon data and based upon the ability to provide a balance between those who would like to have the advantages of an Airbnb and those who are concerned about the overcrowding and the problems that can come from it. By the way, somebody mentioned about having problems with neighbors that didn't, we intend to have a manager who would be available within 15 minutes of the property. We actually own the property next to what we're thinking of doing the Airbnb, and we have tenants in there. They'd be the first ones to call us if there was a problem. But the more important thing is that when you rent to somebody for an Airbnb, you take a deposit, a pretty hefty deposit, which is returnable to them from the management company when they successfully vacate the property. If they sign an agreement that they will follow the rules and not violate the rules, one of the rules would be that they don't get their deposit back if they end up having a police problem or a noise problem with the neighbors. So you can control bad conduct with sensible contract. There's a lot of good point and bad points to dealing with an Airbnb problem. It's not only a problem, it's an opportunity for Warren. I'd be glad to provide any information as we make our decision about what to do.
So if there was an owner occupied provision within this, you'd be out of luck because you wouldn't be owner occupied.
That would do it, and also would be the observation from the council president, because one of the things that I did was ask my attorney in Rhode Island to create an LLC and to, based upon my insurance broker's suggestion that we would be better off separating the Airbnb facility from our long-term rental facility, which my wife continues to own in her own name.
Mr. DeSisto, why is the LLC component a problem?
It shouldn't be.
Well, I'm asking our lawyer.
Can I ask you why I say that? Because when you register something as an LLC, it's because you're gonna run it as a business, not as a home. Okay? So if you've got an LLC and you're gonna run a bed and breakfast out of it, it's a business. It's not a home. And the LLC protects the owner, number one, gives them tax breaks. And number C, an LLC, in other words, an owner occupant, in other words, under the building code, an owner occupant of a single family home can do their own electrical work, plumbing work. But you have to be the owner and occupant. If someone comes in and the property is owned by an LLC, guess what? You're getting somebody licensed in electricity or plumbing to do that work because an LLC cannot be the owner of.
The dry legal explanation for what the Council President Hanley is saying is that an LLC is considered a separate entity from the owner of it, and that's how you get you limit your liability. So his point is the LLC can't be the owner occupant because it's a separate entity.
What if the
Even if you-
LLC members own and occupy the
Doesn't
dwelling?
matter. Doesn't matter.
If for purposes of what is being discussed tonight, then it wouldn't be owner occupied because the owner is a corporation, is a limited liability company.
Even if they live in the house,
Absolutely,
so you don't live there.
absolutely. You live there, but you're not the owner.
Correct.
You own the owner.
And Joe, the reason why
guess I really don't
they
think-
go with LLC is because they're going to run it as a business.
I am an LLC.
You own your house in your LLC?
Uh-huh.
Okay, then you're running it as a business. Then you can't do the bed and breakfast.
Which I wasn't doing anyway.
Right,
I
but-
just.
And the reason to do that is to protect yourself.
You
in
wanna
case
move
something
this
goes
on?
wrong. Yeah, all right, so
You staying in town for a while?
pardon?
Are you staying in town for more? Are you staying in town? I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going
All
where
right,
you're
let's,
going.
Yeah, no, we're staying overnight. This is our third night here.
I didn't even know you were related to me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Anything else from the public before Mr.
Thank you.
Di Pasquale finishes his motion?
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna make a motion to continue this till either next month or until we have an appropriate amount of data to make, it's actually until next month. And I'll leave it up to the council president and the manager to figure out. if
So
we
this
have
would
enough.
be a second reading anyway next month.
Yeah, but we're continuing.
No, we're
this.
continuing. We're not- Yeah.
I'm not moving it. in. So
Yeah, we're just
that's my motion.
continuing. We have a motion to continue the
Second.
first reading. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, we have P3. This is a request for a one-day entertainment license from Davis and Bolster. Davis and
Hello, Davison.
Hi, guys.
How you doing?
How we
Gals.
Actually, we have two here. Let's take them up both at once. One is for the entertainment license and the other one is for a Class F beverage license.
So I'm having an art exhibit at the Coffee Depot. The exhibit will run for the whole month of November, but we're having a reception Sunday, November 6th from 1 to 4. And we would like to have a one acoustic guitar player and the ability to serve wine for those 3 hours.
All right, I make a motion to approve the entertainment license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And have you met with the fire chief and police chief?
Yes, I have on both.
Motion to approve the Class F beverage license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And just so you know, I have already made arrangements with a tip certified server. And
Okay.
if I need liability insurance, I'll take care of that too.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Davison.
And of course, you're all welcome to attend, just so you know.
It's on my calendar. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Okay, next we have correspondence. Anything anybody wants to pull out?
I have nothing.
Okay, now we have old business. Oh, the good old tower for the water authority.
What do you have for us?
Where are we at?
I can tell you that every change that I had asked for has been included in the what is now the license and indemnification agreement. I recommend that you sign.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, new business. This is for request for a kennel ordinance change. Is the person here? Please come forward. Hello.
Hi, my name is Natasha Gomes. We are new to Warren. We just moved into Warren in July.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Love the town, love the people, love my atmosphere. One thing, I'm disappointed about this dog situation. I have 4 dogs. I moved here with them all. They're all rescues. Love our dogs. I got plenty of land for my dogs. They are kennels. They're very obedient. I have no issues with them as far as like, they don't go into my neighbor's yards. They're not running. They're good dogs. Recently, when I first moved in, I said to my husband, well, I want to do things the right way. I'm gonna go register the dogs downtown. Well, I kind of screwed us because in a sense, I gotta knock on my door the next day, telling me I had too many dogs. I had to remove 1 dog from my premises. Our current dog is staying at my brother's house in Fall River. And it's just not fair to my kids, to me, to my family, that our dog has to stay away. 2 of them really belong to my daughter who lives with us, and the other 2 are ours. I kind of parted with there were 3 of them are little dogs. 1's a big dog. They're harmless. I just asked that the town really reconsider this situation, so that we can keep our little fur baby.
Any questions from the council?
Well, I would just say, and I think this kind of echoes what we went through when we had the previous agenda item about the kennel ordinance license situation. What you're asking for, to have a kennel means that you are breeding purebred dogs. And there is a license that exists for that, but you have a variety of different breeds of dogs. You just want to have more than 3 personal dogs at your home. So what you're asking for here is not how the language of this agenda item does not
That's what I
reflect
was
what
told
you're
I had to.
asking.
Yeah, actually,
for.
Kerry, they're requesting that we change the ordinance. So they're asking, they're not asking for a kennel license.
The
They're asking that
ordinance,
we change
yeah.
the ordinance.
So, but this isn't on you. This is on us. What we need to have either a new ordinance or a new language that says how many personal dogs, but that has nothing to do with a kennel ordinance.
Correct.
Our kennel
Correct.
ordinance would remain the same.
Yeah, well, what she's asking us to do, if the council deems that they want to, would be to have the solicitor draft an ordinance which would permit what she wants.
But that has nothing to do with a kennel ordinance.
Well, actually,
That- right?
what she's
It would.
asking for is
To reword the kennel.
the
ordinance.
kennel ordinance now says, if you have over 3 dogs, you need a kennel license, but this is the requirements for a kennel license. I think what the petitioner is asking for is to make it, instead of a limit of 3 dogs, a limit of 4, and then the kennel license kicks in. I think that's the request.
Correct.
So the amendment to the ordinance would change 3 to 4,
Okay.
and that would apply townwide. That's the policy issue here.
Without needing without breeding. So you're
Correct,
making another
without breeding.
category.
So you just
All 4
allowing
of
for
my
it for the
dogs
free.
have been neutered or fixed.
I was
Just so-
speaking specifically the
Okay.
language that now you need a kennel license if you're a hobby breeder.
Right.
You're asking for a kennel license to just.
She's just asking that 4 dogs doesn't mandate for a kennel license.
Yeah, it doesn't trigger. a
Because
kennel
over
license.
3, you need to have the kennel license. That word would be changed to over 4. That would apply throughout town, not just to this particular property. That would apply to the small
Would apply to everywhere.
5,000 square
Situation
foot
last
lots.
month.
It would apply to 3,000 square foot lots.
Same thing as last month.
But
Correct.
exact
They
same
would have
thing.
been allowed to do it.
Exactly.
Correct.
Same to everybody talking about how crazy it
Yep.
is.
Could you attach an acreage clause to it?
She has plenty of.
I don't even know what she
room.
has.
She has plenty of room.
Yeah, Yes, but I'm just wondering if we're going to have the discussion of, well, first and foremost, can we even change the ordinance right now?
No, it would have to be proposed.
No, we would have to,
This is a request. So if you viewed it favorably, you'd refer it to the solicitor to amend the ordinance. It would come back next month for a first reading, then a second reading after that.
And we could attach acreage to it.
so we could attach
Or a
land
butters clause where you would have to
Yeah,
have the.
approvals of butters.
I mean, we could listen to the whole discussion.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be granted, but at least
It would open the
It
discussion
would open the
opportunity to.
Where are we leaning? And would hate to see them go through all of this if we're not even leaning that way. I see no reason to change the ordinance.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a reason it was 3.
Correct.
You know, you kick it up to 4 and it becomes, I mean, I know your situation is perfect, like as you describe it, but we have to think about town-wide and how this affects everyone in town in all of these situations.
so
If
let's,
we could put size on it,
well,
I don't know. I mean, if
And
you own a
could we go-
farm and you, what's, if you have
Yeah.
20 acres and somebody wants to have 20 dogs.
could we also go one step further? I know I keep using the zoning reference, but not creating a precedent, being it a case by case issue. Is that something else that we could address ordinance wise? That you would still need to come before council, you would have to meet these requirements, and it would still have to be approved by council.
Yeah, it's gonna take some research.
Can you work on that?
Yes, I can.
Well, let's get back to the straw poll.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to change the ordinance at all. That's would be me if we voted. If there's not gonna.
I'm at least open to discussing it.
I'm not in favor of changing the number.
I don't know. I mean, if somebody owns 5 acres plus, there's not many spots in town, but I think if somebody does their due diligence and buys a property, 5 acres or more, I don't know.
Or
To
it's gonna
me-
become a don't ask, don't tell, and I'm not gonna tell you I have 4 dogs, and I'm just.
Well, I don't believe that's the case.
Yeah,
because I
That's
think-
going on.
I
right.
think so
Of course.
many, yeah, but
Yeah.
I think so many neighbors know about the number that people do. I mean, no offense
My
to you,
neighbors are
following the
like
rules.
Yeah.
I really don't think it was necessary. I mean, in places where everything works well, yeah, I don't think people are policing each other when there's not an issue.
Right.
But I think when somebody goes, something's driving somebody crazy and they call town hall and they find out that the number's 3. Now they just call the dog
Right,
officer because
right.
they know that the person who's driving them crazy is in violation.
Right. Never
I
had an
mean,
issue.
the dog. So I'm open to the potential aspect of, I mean, I've thought about this every time this comes in front of us too, because there have been a few kennel licenses. I can't remember exactly where, it might be out. It's
They were
out
out
in
in Twisted and
Twisted.
we shot them down.
No, we had one
gave
in
it,
Twisted where
yeah.
she does hobby breed. She had about 5 or 10
Yeah.
acres or whatever. So to me, it wasn't even an issue, you know, and she met all the components. So I don't know, there is part of me that says if somebody has a property, there's not many in town.
Oh, my goodness. My dogs have a 30 by 30 kennel outside, completely fenced in.
I mean, not just kennel, but I mean, if you said you own 9.6 acres,
Yeah.
right, so there aren't that.
0.96.
6.
I wish I did.
Alright.
So just under an acre.
I mean, I was thinking in regards to the properties in town that are large. If that was something we were talking about, I think that, to me, the hobby breed, I think if you've got more than 5 acres or something, and you're not necessarily hobby breeding, but you have the land to show, you know, that there's not an issue. So no, unfortunately, I'm not really open to changing it under. I thought you had a partial.
It's really difficult because the last 2 times we've had people come before us looking for relief or looking for an exception for their additional personal dog. It's come with extreme pushback from their neighbors because they were in thickly settled neighborhoods and the dogs presented a nuisance to the neighbors. And so, you know,
Which I understand.
which is why we have the restriction of 3
Totally
dogs.
understandable.
And opening the door to the discussion where we might provide the opportunity for some and not others to have the additional dog is gonna seem really unfair to those who were denied in the past. Having the scenario if it's even possible where we're able to look at it on a case-by-case basis. I don't want to be put in Sophie's choice. I don't want to be going my son or my daughter, my dog or my cat, whatever. I don't think that we need to be in that position up here. A land, some sort of provision where you have acreage or, there's no abutters for lots after lots. I mean, that makes sense to me, but on the other hand, you're living in the smallest town, in the smallest county, in the smallest state. And we have to be mindful of all of our residents and keeping everybody, safe in their quality of life protected. And it's breaking my heart to look at you two thinking that you had to, have one of your dogs go live someplace else. I got a dog.
Yeah.
It would break my heart too, but
I just think each individual dog owner too, you can't really put into category
yeah,
one
it's,
owner and another, because I mean, I've seen some, and we all have on television and whatnot, what some people do to animals. But if the animals are well fed, they're well taken care of, you have them trained, I really think all that should be taken into consideration.
yeah.
My dogs won't even cross my trees because they know it's the neighbor's yard and they know they're not meant to, and I've only been here a couple of months. They're very well behaved dogs.
I admire people who are so disciplined with their pets to have them safe like that. I think it's such a,
Yeah.
and I'm working towards that myself. But I think that we decided on 3, or it was decided many councils before us
3.
to be 3. And until somebody can come to us with a proposal that makes perfect sense, that takes the sort of onus off us as elected officials making such personal decisions for people.
I think I can help you with that. Mr. DeSisto, what's the state law?
Yeah.
So
All right, that being said, can we have a motion to either change or
We don't-
not
You
change?
don't have to take any action.
Well, discussion and action, I think we should at least vote to either take action or not take action. Can I have a motion?
Motion to table the issue.
We have a motion and second to table, all in favor? Aye. Okay, sorry.
Mr. President, would you please explain to our applicant exactly what table means?
Basically, what table means is that council at this time is not willing to change the ordinance.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
sorry. Okay, new business 2, Joe, discussion and action on removal of the backstop and cement bleachers at First Hill.
Yes. Over the years, we put hundreds of thousands of dollars into all our recreation facilities outside of town. The last time I think that field was prepped up, I think they raised, Mr. Kalenda, you were involved in that, weren't you? It was like $40,000. It was 50. So all of that money.
But it was a combo with that in Janelle, but it was 50. Yeah.
So a lot of money is spent to renovate a field and then to get all the teams to use it, and it's fallen into disarray again. And I brought this idea up to you guys
Yes.
in the past, and then we received a letter from someone else. I've actually spoken to other people who are having the same idea all at the same time. I think that we should and I've also spoken to Mr. Thibodeau. I think we should send this to the Recreation Department as well as the Conservation Commission and come up with their ideas back to us. There may be a discussion on removing all of the bleachers or not all or some or whatever, but I'm open to this discussion to put that field to rest, plant a grove of trees, have our walkway that is part of our grant requirement for the bathroom facilities to be incorporated, have a nice shade grove for the concert series. And I would also like to have the Native Americans involved. I think it would be great because they're going to be involved anyway because of the archaeological surveys that would need to be done. But I think it would be great to have Dr. Weed invite them in and have their input as well. I think this is a great opportunity for us to change the use into a much more passive recreational park atmosphere for lounging under the shade. So and I also am confident that our DPW could perform that work. And I'd like to see what their feedback would be on that idea.
Joe, I think it should go to the historic committee also. That's technically the bleachers, I would say, is a historic structure, and it may actually even need a demo permit from
Well,
the
they're
town
from
council.
1938, I think the WPA plaque is on there.
I think,
I think the neighboring resident said 1925.
yeah, it dates back.
Yeah, I would say it's historic and it's in a historic district. It's a structure. By ordinance, it's gonna have to go to that.
All right, so I have no problem
Yeah.
including
What I would
all
like to
committees
see,
that.
yeah, is if we could refurbish those bleachers and utilize them as some seating for the outdoor concert.
That was an idea that was
Yeah.
brought.
I mean, you know, the backstop, the dugout areas, if we're going to remove them, remove them. The baseball field, you know, the local teams are now partnered with Bristol, so we're okay there. It is gonna be difficult for me not to see baseball being played down there anymore, but, you know, things move forward. But I really feel strongly about, let's try to save those bleachers.
Yeah, those bleachers to me are iconic.
Yeah,
You know.
and I think it would be a project over time that, you know, we can refurbish them. And, but I think also with the Native Americans coming down and the plaques that we could impose on those bleachers about the renovation project, it would be something for our folks 15, 20, 30, 40, and 50 years from now to look upon and say, oh, this is really nice. You sit up, yeah, in 100 years.
They're 100 years old now, yeah.
The one big compliment I got that when I was doing baseball games down there is the folks didn't realize how close it was to the water. And they would sit in those cement bleachers and you had that beautiful view down the left field line, right out into the beach area. So,
So I imagine sitting there in the shade, under
exactly,
the trees, and I think we should
Exactly.
have the discussion and.
yeah. So I would say moving forward,
Motion?
that's good.
Anything else before?
So,
do you think?
so it's removal of backstop, the cement bleachers is not necessarily removed.
Well, let's see what the committees come back with. Yeah.
And then eliminating the baseball field essentially.
Yes,
That's what we're saying.
Well, the
Because that's-
baseball field doesn't exist anymore.
well, it does if you look
There's
on
a
it.
space that you would have. to send in on top
Where the
of
grass
wall.
is the deadest.
But
Yeah.
a lot of people, as Ms. Thibodeau said, would be upset to know that the baseball field was being eliminated, but I think that we're.
Yeah,
we're
we'll
all-
flush that out in the meeting.
we're all-
Yeah, I've lived through the
appreciate-
softball field being eliminated. I've lived through the renovation of that field, and then I've watched the use of the field destroy it.
I
So,
agree, there
so
could
you
be a
want to put that in
higher.
motion?
yeah, I
indebtedness.
put that in the form of a motion. You send it off to
To send
the
it to the various committees,
all committees through the coordination of.
possibly at the same time have DPW look into what it might cost to refurbish those bleachers. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Second, reducing loitering and vandalism at J Mills, Councilman Di Pasquale.
Yeah, well, as all of you may be aware of, there've been some arrests made, there've been some problems, there've been some issues with the legal use of the field. So through my conversations with the solicitor, I think that there is an opportunity for us to tighten up the language in a way that would make it easier for the police to enforce. Because loitering, if you have a basketball, you're not loitering. If you're down there, I mean, it kind of gets into a gray area. And, you know, over Labor Day weekend, we had a local business owner get in a situation that was unfortunate that I think wouldn't have happened had the use of J Mills Park as a hangout area may not have made this unfortunate circumstance come together. So I would like to get the solicitor's take on our ability to help the police strengthen their enforcement without necessarily limiting our recreational use. And I would, of course, would like Ms. Thibodeau to be involved. I've spoken to her as well. So I'm not talking about taking away our recreational uses. I'm talking about trying to figure out how we don't have DPW down there every other day cleaning up broken glass or destroyed facilities and traffic. When we were kids, we all were at the park, and we may have done things that weren't necessarily what we would do in front of our parents, but we never wrecked them.
No, we didn't break
We
it.
never wrecked anything, and we always absolutely took ownership of the turf. I mean, it was odd, and we looked at it that way.
I had a key for the lights at Birds Hill Park. I used to
So.
I'll turn them on whenever I want it.
If you can help us figure out how to make some sharper teeth in our rules.
Can I ask a real quick question? And I apologize if we do, I'm just not familiar. Do we have an ordinance that covers time use on these parks?
Yeah.
We do, yes.
Is it 9 PM or if it's not a league event or something?
It's sun up to sundown,
Okay,
except if it's a lighted facility and then it goes to 10:30.
so maybe reducing that time frame.
Well, this is actually what I'd like to do.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say just a few things briefly. And then I'm gonna make a suggestion. We're dealing with chapter 13. And that is under offenses and miscellaneous provisions. Now you have your firearms and everything. That doesn't really apply here. But section 13-3 is injuring, defacing, etc., town property. Section 13-4 is public or indecent intoxication. Section 13-5 is minors in possession of consumption of alcoholic beverages in public places. Section 13-6 is picnics. Picnics involving intoxicating liquors are restricted.
So you can eat
You have a
sandwiches.
cookout,
but
you just can't have a picnic.
Can't be drinking.
can't be drinking.
The big one is section 13-7 loitering. And section 13-8 playing ball, throwing stones, etc. in the streets. Now, the only reason I bring these up is because they were all enacted in 1967. I think it's time to take a look at chapter 13 and to come back with suggestions, tying into, by the way, what Councilman Kalenda said, which is the hours that your parks and recreation facilities can be used. As much as I'd like to recommend that this get referred to the Traffic Commission, I can't. But I do think it should be referred to the manager, solicitor, or recreation director, and the chief of police. And I think what we need to do is to bring chapter 13 out of the 60s and into the 2020s, the first thing. And the second thing is to see how the rules and regulations of the recreational facility should be used. And we could come back at a seasonable time.
Makes sense.
Yep, so I put that in form of a motion.
We have a motion to refer it to the required parties and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
What's the definition? What's the difference between loitering and just hanging out in the park and sitting on a blanket and reading a book, or maybe, listening to music and. hanging out with
Lascivious
your
and no
friends?
particular
I
purpose.
mean,
Here's the definition. No person shall loiter, lounge, or sleep in or upon any street or public place, or obstruct the access to any public building or any part thereof, or obstruct passage through or upon any public street or public place. For purposes of this section, the term loiter shall encompass, but shall not necessarily be limited to, one or more of the following acts: obstruction of the free, unhampered passage of pedestrians and vehicles, obstructing, molesting, or interfering with any person lawfully upon any street or other public place, refusing to move on when so requested by a peace officer, provided the peace officer has exercised his discretion reasonably under the circumstances in order to preserve or promote peace and order.
Wow,
Okay.
that's.
So
So
now
it's up to
if
the
there's
discretion
no-
of the police.
Right, so if there's an altercation that took place, now it turned into your word against theirs, the police officers there, the whole thing can turn into, how do you even, and then, I don't know, it's unfortunate what took place, and it's unfortunate what we have them try to enforce, and it's unfortunate the way the kids are acting. I don't even know if they're kids, I really don't, I don't even know if these are adults or not.
It's something to review, not only from an ordinance standpoint, but also from an operations standpoint. I'd like the opportunity to discuss the same with the relevant.
I mean, I'm sick of the same group of kids. I almost feel like if you're down there, if we set the rules right, you're down there, you're trespassing, you get arrested.
Is there any way we could put something in that ordinance, or does it already exist, that the parents of the kids that damage the property would be financially responsible?
It's gonna take a little research.
All right, so we
Okay.
made a motion and we
Yep.
did it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next is the solicitor. It's discussion and action on a claim of Richard Woods.
This is an interesting one. I like his argument.
You saw the claim, but I will say this.
Refer to trust.
Well, actually, yeah, I'm gonna ask to
And I
refer
have
to the
to
trust
refer to
because
the
of the statements that are contained in the letter, but I will say this. Staff is diligent enough to make sure that everything is in writing, particularly emails. So I can say that after reviewing the file, that this file is in very good order. Notwithstanding that, because of the threat contained in the letter, my recommendation is to deny the matter and refer it to the interlocal trust.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Refer it to the trust.
And I'll ask for one more motion to allow the solicitor to respond to Mr. Wood, to let him know what the town's action has been.
Okay. We have a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, next, Finance Director. Hello, Fung. We all
Good
got-
evening.
We all got our revenue and expenditures in the email.
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Nope, we got the quarterly reporting. Everything seemed to be
Yep.
where we want to be at this time of the year.
Yep.
Very good. Any questions from the
So
council?
far.
No.
Is
Thank
there,
you.
what's remaining on the storefront improvement monies? It's because the total here is 116,878.44. Didn't we put like 150 in originally? But is there stuff balance outstanding? So it's spent. Okay.
Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Next, we have building official. I see this, but I've been informed that this is to be pulled for tonight. Okay.
So moved.
And second, too.
Okay, to continue to next month possibly, yeah.
Yes.
Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't call you yet. Go all the way back. Next, we have Recreation Director. We have a request to reject the bid for the Veterans Field Track Repair.
Yes, so we would like to actually look at the whole project. And so when we got the bid and the recommendation, we want to kind of rework the project. We'd like to reject this and move forward.
Okay, any
So
questions?
moved.
We have a motion to reject the bid. A second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Next, we have another request to reject the bid and to negotiate with the bidder for James Mills Park softball field renovation.
Yes, so we would like to also reject this bid and possibly do like a hybrid request and negotiate with the company.
I have a question for the manager as well, maybe, I don't know. But I remember I had asked previously about the access point on Market that I think historically was an access point. We have gates there and all. What's the story of that? Because I know the two neighbors are probably very accustomed to using it as their own. Could we get an actual definition on that spot? Anybody know where I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking
Yep, if the town does go in and grade that, it's town property, it's
Right.
part of the park.
I guess where I'm coming from is it's an access point we never use. We have probably new people owning those houses since I was a kid and we did use that access. I think we should take a little bit more accountability for it, and I think we should look at it as an access point. And it's always doesn't sit right with me that it's town property and yet it's not used. So I don't know what we need to do to make it officially understood by those two sides. I'm not saying that anybody misuses it, but it's a private driveway and it's an access point to the park that's never been used except from when I was a child.
Okay, first thing we're gonna have to do is the title search, which we'll do. And we'll take the appropriate steps at the staff level.
Thank you.
All right, so we need to reject the bid for the Jamie Park softball renovations. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
And a motion to renegotiate, or is that inherent in the rejection?
That was in.
Okay.
Right, so.
Change the
same or
motion.
separate.
To reject the bid and negotiate with the bidder. So you want to amend your motion? Second, the amended
Second.
motion? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have town clerk. Request the town council to award and authorize the town council president to sign an agreement with Avenu Insights and Analytical Records Management and Imaging System.
Yes, so as of 2023, our current vendor is going to charge us an extra 10,000 a year for malware.
Okay,
And this was our previous vendor, so we kind of know how they operate. And
okay.
we really liked it. We're looking to go back to them.
And it does fall within the budgeted amount?
Yes.
Okay. Kate, anything on this?
No, I know the clerk's office has done a lot of research on this, so they've been working on this for quite a while, so I'm confident in their recommendation.
Okay, when we have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the town clerk's recommendation to go with the venue.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is discussion and action to start November 27th meeting at 6 p.m. And the reason for this is the election is the next day and the girls have to get up very, very, very early.
5 a.m.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to start the meeting at 6 p.m. on November 7th, 2022.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
And note that that is a Monday.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
I take offense to the use of the word girls.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Ladies,
Women it would be bad too.
ladies,
The
ladies,
clerks.
Yeah, the clerks.
If I offended you, I apologize.
Yeah.
It was meant endearingly.
That goes all the way back to you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for changing the time. All in favor?
Aye.
We need a
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Nope.
Second.